Hi folks, welcome back to the Cannabis Corner. I'm your host, Kerry Burns. It's really good to be back with you. It's quite refreshing for what's going on around the country right now with the politicians and even our own president. They're talking about legalizing cannabis, finally, after 7.5 decades of being illegal in this country. There is a few little issues though going on that I see that seems to be, just innate with all of these politicians and whatnot, is that they're living in the past as far as the facts and stuff that they're basing everything on. You take the president himself, he said, well, that they didn't think that cannabis was any more dangerous than alcohol. And, with all due respect, Mr. President, I'd like to say that cannabis smokers out there, and we've known this for a long time, we know that cannabis in no way is like alcohol, that is very dangerous. It kills 150,000 people a year, and you need to look at the statistics at the big fat zero at the bottom there on the Bureau of Vital Statistics report that's put out by the government showing that cannabis kills no one. Cannabis smokers like myself are somewhat offended when we hear people comparing cannabis equal to alcohol. And even though alcohol has been legal and cannabis has been illegal, we have known for a long time that cannabis is way safer. It kills nobody, and you can't say that about alcohol. So there's a lot of these facts that people are putting out. They really need to get out of what I call this living in the past of this rhetoric and all these lies that the government has been putting out. Our own governor in the state of Texas is trying to talk about decriminalization and whatnot, and I thought I would never hear the day that those words would come out of his mouth. And I applaud Rick Perry for that. I really believe that the light is finally starting to come on in his brain and some of these other politicians around. But there are a few problems, and they really need to get out of this past that they've been living in with all of these lies and stuff, because cannabis has been safe. I mean, the Eric Holder, the Attorney General there, he says, well, we're going to take a look at this thing going on in Colorado and Washington, and if it gets to be a problem for the public and all, then we'll go in there and shut it down. Well, Mr. Holder, come on. Okay, y'all have had, since the 1st of January in Colorado, people have been smoking every day and all. Have you had any reports of anybody dying or anybody having problems with cannabis and whatnot? Of course not, and you're not going to, because the 45 years that I've been smoking, and there are many people like myself that have been, there haven't been any problems. And this is what we've been trying to tell you all along for a long period of time, that cannabis truly is safe. And if you compare it to alcohol, it should be that you arrest the people for alcohol and not for cannabis. But I'm one for people being able to choose what they want to do, and they should have the right to put whatever substances they want in their body. But they need to you need to kind of get off of this past that y'all been living in with all of these lies and everything that all this criminality that y'all designed and arresting all these people have been based on. Even George Stephanopoulos on ABC there had his program last week, that the round table they get on, they discuss different issues and whatnot, and they took up the cannabis issue, and they were talking about what was going on in Colorado and whatnot, and showed some of the shops up there and some of the growers and whatnot. But one of the correspondents there on there, though, he falsely said, he said, well, this isn't your daddy's marijuana. The cannabis today is 3 times stronger than it used to be back then. And sir, I don't know if you smoke cannabis or not, but it's obvious that you haven't been smoking the cannabis, certainly that's been coming across the border from Mexico, because compared to the cannabis that I used to smoke that came from Mexico back in the late 60s and early 70s, compared to what's coming across the border today, I mean, it's a night and day difference, and it's not stronger. If anything, it's 10 times weaker. It's lost all of its good qualities of smell, the taste, even the effect of the stone and the percent THC. These have all gone downhill. And the reason that has happened is because most of the old growers that lived in Mexico and all have died out, and you've got a bunch of young, probably cartel members that have taken over the growing down there. And the biggest mistake they have been making is they have been crossing these weak cannabis strains with some of these Oaxacan and Michoacan and Guerin varieties that were really strong, Acapulco Gold, and they've been producing strains that are weaker. And this is the nature of the cannabis plant. If the pot increased every time you did a crossing, in other words, if you take 1% of THC, say 10%, 15%, cross it with 1, 5, or 10%, only the weaker strain is increased. You don't have this magic going on where, you know, a 25% THC plant is produced out of a 15% one and a 10% one crossed together. It's scientifically impossible. And when you look at data like that, you can see that even through time, if this would have been going on, we would have had cannabis right now that would contain over 1,000% THC. But the thing is, it doesn't happen like that. The percent THC, the strength of the cannabis when you smoke it and all, is based on the variety. And these varieties, these Afghan varieties, that the ATF, the chronic, some of those stronger varieties, all of the indican varieties and whatnot, these have been around for a long, long time, long before any of us ever came on the planet. And their percent THC has remained exactly the same through this whole period. The only strains that are improved in a crossing are the weak ones. The strongest of the THC in the two crossings is the highest it will get. So if you're crossing one that has a 25% THC with one that's lower, you're not going to achieve a plant that has a THC content stronger than 25%. It's scientifically impossible. So to make a statement to say that this ain't your daddy's marijuana from back in the 70s, that it's, you know, 3 times stronger now, is just absolutely false. And it's obvious that you don't know what you're talking about, and it really upsets me that these people on these national programs, they just keep putting out these if anything, just stupid information because they aren't educated enough to know what they're talking about. Cannabis is one of those type of plants that the percent THC is based on the strain, based on the variety. And if you want to grow really good pot, you've got to get seeds of a really good variety. Now, true, with the growers that have been going on in this country and the different people that have been trying different crossings and stuff, we have been exposed to some of the stronger varieties that used to not be readily available. But these strong varieties were available back when I was a teenager. In fact, some of the best cannabis that I have smoked to this day, and I've smoked the ATF, I've smoked the chronic, and I've smoked a lot of the different stronger strains. I still say that one of the strains that I smoked back then when I was around 17 years old was some of the strongest cannabis that I've ever smoked. I've smoked some that have been comparable, pretty close to it in modern day times today. But this idea that, you know, we have all this much stronger cannabis and we should be careful with it and all that is just ludicrous. And we have 4.5 decades since the Controlled Substance Act was passed by the crony Nixon, and all of the people have been smoking cannabis. This is a pretty good test, I would say, of the safety of cannabis. In those 45 years that I've been smoking, I don't know of anybody that ever went to the hospital. I don't know of anybody that ever had a problem smoking cannabis. I certainly don't know of anybody that overdosed or died from it, since that's never happened before. So what I see with these politicians and all, they keep wanting to hang on to this. They're talking about legalization and how they can regulate it and tax this and tax that and whatnot, but they're stuck in this zone of that cannabis somehow is some dangerous substance that we just need to make sure we've got absolute control over it. Now, I agree with the modern day setup that they got in Colorado, that it should be age specific, that a minor shouldn't be able to go up to the store and buy and all, just like cigarettes, just like alcohol. Even though cannabis is not dangerous like these two substances, I do believe that there ought to be regulations in that regard. But this trying to keep somebody from, you know, a personal individual, that you can only grow a certain amount of plants, a certain number of plants, and only possess a certain amount, all that, this I think is absolutely wrong. I mean, I think if anything, the law, if you want to make a law on limiting the number of plants that a person should grow, you should be able to grow at least one variety of each strain out there, which would be around 300 that are indigenous to the world. The world as we know it today. Of course, we have probably over 6,000 strains of cannabis today due to all the crossings between these 300 varieties. But if anything, we should have a law that says, well, you should be allowed to grow at least one plant of each different strain, so that would be around 300 plants. I mean, when people grow their gardens and they go to the garden center, they don't say, okay, when you get your tomato plants there, be sure you only get like, you know, you can only grow 6 plants, you know, and so you better pick out the varieties that you want to grow. I mean, I just don't even, as a plant person, and I grow plants and every day I grow herbs and whatnot, I just don't see how this can fly in the modern world today. you know, if anything, we would want people to grow as many different plants and different varieties as possible. One of the tragedies that's going on in the Department of Agriculture and the farming industry in this country, particularly what Monsanto has done to the seeds supply of different food crops and stuff, is that we've limited our diversity. We are now in this country growing about 2 or 3 strains of corn is responsible for 97% of the corn that's growing out there. And should there ever be a natural fungus or some type of calamity that occurs with these modern varieties, you know, we're going to be screwed because we're not going to have the diversity that we had back 100 years ago when a lot of different food crops and varieties were being grown. And cannabis is the same way. If you want to maintain a purity and a consistency within an agricultural plant and whatnot, diversity is your best key. And you have different extremes, you know, and it's true for cannabis too, but you got to keep the diversity up. So to limit somebody on not only the number of plants they grow, but you also limit the number of strains that they can grow, and this in the long run will lead to a lack of diversity. And if it's this lack of diversity that's really going to take us down. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you heard about the potato famine that happened in Ireland, and all the people over there, they were growing one type of potato, and here comes along this fungus and completely wipes it out, and you know, half the population starved to death. This is the consequence of limiting the diversity when you're growing agricultural products. And certainly this is going to be true with anything we grow in this country, cannabis not being excluded. So if anything, the law should encourage people to grow different strains. Certainly grow the strains that you want to, grow the ones that you like the most, but to be limited by the number that you as an individual, as a citizen of the United States, as a free person in this country, to be limited and say, you can only grow a certain number of plants. And oh, by the way, when you do your garden, you know, I don't want to come out there and see more than 10 tomato plants in your garden. I mean, come on. This is what is just insane. And all of the politicians around the country, particularly in the South, Louisiana, Texas and all, they're talking about the decriminalization or legalization and whatnot. They want to have the stringent control on it, like all of these lies that have been being told for 4.5 decades that I've been smoking, and certainly 7.5 decades since the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. They want people to believe that this is a dangerous substance and that we do need to put this iron-fisted control over it. And that's ludicrous. And what that's going to lead to is this lack of diversity. It's going to lead to people really, you know, thwarting a commodity that and we don't even talk about the hemp industry anymore, but all of the talk and with all these politicians and whatnot, nobody is mentioning the fact that the hemp industry could come back, and this is where the money is in this country. You can grow if everybody in this country, all 330 million of us, each, women, children, grandfather, grandma, everybody out there, if we all smoked an ounce a day, 365 days a year, you could grow this amount of weed that it would take to supply that on a very, very small amount of land. So the money is not to be made in the cannabis. And it's certainly being made some in some of these shops and stuff in Colorado and fixing to start happening there in Washington and all. But another thing that's being failed to being realized here is that the price that is being charged for this cannabis strains and all is a cartel price. The reason that price got where it is because it's been an illegal commodity. When they made cannabis legal, the very first thing that should have happened was the price should have come down. But what do? They add a 25% sales tax on top of that and all. And this is out of the world wrong. I mean, seriously, folks, the only way that this is going to work is if we do approach actual legalization across the board. If a person wants to grow a plant on every square foot of their property, they should be allowed to do that. It's their business. They should be able to grow as many strains as they want, however they want to do it. And shop owners that want to sell it and all that need to purchase a sales tax permit for their state as they're required for any other business, and a business license if that state requires it. And this should be the stipulations that's involved, not turning 25% of the money that's taken in back over to the government and all that. If we got the hemp industry going, just the sales tax alone on the hemp products would exceed the combined total of all the cannabis being sold in this country, even at this cartel price. So there's a lot of problems there. You really, you legislators, when you start talking about in your particular states and all of making cannabis legal or decriminalization and whatnot, you need to get out of this framework in your mind of all these lies that you've been living through the last 4 or 5 decades, and these lies that have been enforcing the criminality of cannabis. The true crime here with cannabis is not in possessing cannabis or growing it or anything like that. It's the fact that people are being arrested based on a bunch of lies. And this has got to change. And once this mental block is what I call it, once these people get over this mental block, then we actually will see the price come down. We'll actually see more varieties available. Growers will be able to keep the diversity up. They will be able to ensure the fact that the same thing that happened with the potato farmers in Ireland or the corn crops here in the United States and all, that this won't happen with the cannabis product and all. And we've got to get the hemp industry going. If we started making fuel out of the hemp industry, out of the hemp plant, and all the other 50,000 products that can be made from this plant, this industry would be $1 trillion a year industry. And if you take all of the cannabis right now that's being sold at this cartel, what I like to call a cartel price because it's just so jacked up there, the sales tax alone on the hemp industry products would exceed all of the money that's being taken in at this illegal price for the cannabis. And I know a lot of growers, they're selling their product for, $10 to $20 a gram out there. They're making money on it and all that. But if you were able to grow freely, in other words, not be limited to the number of plants you're growing and all, the growth could outsupply the demand. And when you do that, of course the price is going to come down, but that's what you want. But you will be making more money. It's I don't know, it's like a mental block there with these people. They just cannot get past all of this rhetoric, all these lies that have been being built up, particularly since the Controlled Substance Act and Nixon and of course through the Reagan-Bush years and all that. They just can't seem to get this out of their head. All of that stuff that y'all made up about pot, about you'll be a failure, you'll never graduate from college, you won't be able to have children, it just goes on and on and on. This is all wrong, and you can't keep basing new legislation on past lies. We've got to change that. We've got to change that mind concept within these people, because cannabis is safe. And when you look at what just alcohol and cigarettes kill in this country, and God knows this, if we put prescription pills in there, which I honestly believe that if we had made cannabis legal back in 1970, you would not have the pill addiction and the problem with the pills that you're seeing right now. I mean, OxyContin, hydrocodones, those types of substances kill way more in 1 month than all the illegal substances, heroin, methamphetamine, all of those combined in an annual period. These types of pills and stuff kill more in a month than all of those combined do in a year. So I honestly believe that if we had made cannabis legal back in 1970, we've left it off the Controlled Substance Act completely, because it has no place there. It's not a substance that causes a problem with the public or anything like that. You would not have the pill addiction that's going on in this country. You would not have these people dropping dead from overdoses from all these strong narcotics that are going on. And oh God, can the people on the border, can the law enforcement officers and whatnot, on these shows that are where they catching people with cannabis coming across the border, could y'all please stop calling it a deadly narcotic? I mean, you don't even follow what the United Nations Office of Drug Control Policy, which regulates the Singles Narcotics Treaty and all, we're going on the 4th year now that they said that cannabis will be referenced to as cannabis or cannabis resin for the hashish, not deadly narcotics, not dope, not, all this. If you look at law enforcement, they always got to say something that supports why they've got to be so tough on this and all. And this bull of constantly calling it a deadly narcotic and whatnot is just, it's wrong. So if you're in your state and your politicians are talking about legalization and whatnot, that's fantastic. We certainly need to support them, and we certainly need to make that happen. But we've got to change what's going on with this intrinsic mindset of these people. We've got to make them understand that, hey, cannabis is safe. It isn't like alcohol. It doesn't kill like alcohol. It doesn't cause the problems of cigarettes, alcohol, and deadly narcotic pills and stuff. And this is what has to change. And once we get these people to change their mindset and all, then these legislatures and the different states and all, it'll be very simple for them to pass laws that make cannabis legal. It'll be very simple for the average guy out in the pub, if he just wants to grow him some plants and all that, more power to him. He should be allowed to. No different than he's allowed to grow his own garden in his backyard if he wants to. And this is really what has to change. Of all the problems that I see out there, it's just like the fellow on the George Stephanopoulos show saying that the cannabis was 3 times stronger. I mean, it could never be more wrong. It could never have said something so untrue and so scientifically unbased. And this is the problem. We have got to get these people out of this mindset that they've been living in for at least 4.5 decades that I've been smoking, and certainly for 7.5 decades since the 1937 Tax Act was passed. And I appreciate all of you visiting the Cannabis Corner. I want you to go out there and educate people. This is the only way it's going to happen. People have to be educated. They have to be shown the truth. They have to be told, you know, cannabis is a safe product. It is something they were given to children back in the early 1900s and up to the period of the Tax Act in 1937. They were given dosages to children for a whole variety of ailments. Yes, medical marijuana was around back then, even though they didn't call it that. But they were given children dosages of extremely strong Afghani varieties that most of us wouldn't even smoke in a month. They were given to these children and they never had a problem. They never had anybody die from it. They never had to take any of these children to the hospital or anything like that. So we've got to get out of this mindset of these lies that's been going on. And I feel like that if we can get the congressmen and the legislatures and even our own president, who used to smoke, I mean, that's the joke of it all. Obama used to be part of the chum gang, and I'm sure that he never felt like he had to go to the hospital or was going to die from it when he was smoking that killer Kona variety out there in Hawaii. I mean, come on, Mr. President. You know, it's in no way even close to the dangers of alcohol and certainly some of the other substances that are legal. So let's get the politicians, they're on the right track, at least they're talking about it. It looks like we are going to finally see some things happen in this country, but we've got to get law enforcement off of this. We've got to get these people, get the mindset changed and get the facts in their heads. And once we do that, I feel like we're really going to see things happening. And of course, what needs to happen overall is to get rid of this cartel price. We've got to get cannabis prices back down to where they're affordable, where people who don't have the room to grow it and whatnot can go down and buy it at a reasonable price, and the grower and the seller and the retailer and whatnot will all make a profit. And then by doing so, of course, we get the hemp industry going, and this is truly where the money's at. If we can start making fuel out of this deal here and make up for the 50 to 60% glut that we have to bring oil into this country and start burning it in our cars, we will have an industry not only that is 10 times more than even the cannabis market with the high prices that's going on, but we will have lots of work and lots of jobs for a lot of people out there. So I thank you so much for joining the Cannabis Corner, and I appreciate all your help out there and just educate people. You know, let them know. I mean, myself, I've smoked for 45 years. It never stopped me. I got a college degree. I've had 4 children. Everything that they've ever said about cannabis has never happened to me or anybody like me, and I have lots of friends that have been smoking just as long as I have, and they haven't had any issues whatsoever, and certainly none of the lies that have been just rammed down our throat all these years have ever been true. Thank you for joining the Cannabis Corner.